Welcome to another edition of the Camel Clutch Blog Extra, and it is always a good time when I get a chance to sit down over the Skype and talk to my good friend Brian Fritz from BetweenTheRopes.com, a contributor on FoxSports.com and thesportingnews.com. And Brian, I'm sure you have other avenues where you're pumping your stuff out there. How's it going today?
Everything's going well. I'm going Skyping. I mean, Will Ferrell went streaking in old school, and we're going Skyping.
Yes, Hank the Tank, right?
Frank the Tank.
Frank the Tank. You know, I always get that messed up. And my wife, she makes fun of me endlessly whenever I try and whenever I get that mixed up.
Frank the Tank drove the Red Dragon, which was his red Trans Am that he was always working on.
Yes. I mean, I get anyway. We'll talk about my marital problems on another show. Well, big news today, Brian. It's ironic that we're doing the podcast today because the big news is that Seth Rollins looks like he's going to be on the shelf for 6 to 9 months. He's got a number of injuries in the knee and ACL and MCL, medial meniscus tear. And the WWE title is vacant. It's going to be decided in a tournament at Survivor Series, which ironically was almost 20 years ago when they did the same thing in 1998 under different circumstances. So, you know, yesterday when the news broke, most of the reports suggested that Rollins just tweaked the knee, but yet nobody knew for sure, and Rollins finished the match. But that's not the case. He's out. You have to wonder if by him finishing the match, if he did more damage to it. You know, they're doing the tournament. A, your initial thoughts, and B, as far as the tournament, is that what you would have done? Would you have gone with the tournament?
Well, it sucks that anybody gets an injury, but, you know, to a guy like Seth Rollins, who I think was doing very well as champion, and to see it cut short because of an injury is horrible. And then the timing couldn't have been worse right now with, you know, Cena taking time off, Brock Lesnar's got time off, Randy Orton is injured. You're getting ready to go into WrestleMania season in the not so distant future. So, and I think that Rollins, whether he had the championship or not, was going to be factored into the main event title picture for probably through the next 3 months. So, you know, that's already tough enough. And then, you know, to do the tournament, I mean, I don't know what else they could have done. I mean, the only other thing I could have thought of is if they trotted him out on Raw and he was injured and, you know, Sheamus cashed in on him and took advantage of the moment, which maybe they could have done, but that would have instantly turned Rollins babyface for whenever he was going to return. So maybe that's something they didn't want to do. And maybe they've got a different idea of who they want to be champions, so they said, let's just do this tournament.
Yeah, do you think this is going to be a kind of deal where I mean, it was fairly assumed that Roman Reigns was going to win the title, whether it be at Survivor Series or the next pay-per-view thereafter. Do you think that they go in a different direction? Like you said, maybe Sheamus winds up taking this thing. Maybe Reigns wins the tournament, and then Sheamus cashes that night. I feel like Reigns is so predictable at this point that they almost have to go in another direction. Not that they need to necessarily do that because it's predictable, but it just seems that that's what they do. When something's that predictable, they wind up going in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another reason is because they are short of a top-notch heel right now. I mean, Rollins was the top heel. Without him, who is the top heel? So to me, it makes a lot more sense if somebody besides Reigns wins the title, and that person has to be elevated to basically top heel status, or either already has to be a heel or they have to turn somebody, and that person needs to win the championship, and Reigns needs to do the chasing again.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking of the different scenarios, and I thought that, and it certainly would have been hot-shotting, maybe not best for business, but I thought that they would have gotten on the phone with Brock Lesnar and had a matchup with Lesnar and Reigns, maybe on Raw, maybe on Survivor Series, but it looks like they're not going to go in the Lesnar direction, although you never know. He may wind up in the tournament.
You know what the funny thing is? If they're doing this tournament and you don't have John Cena and Brock Lesnar in the tournament, I think a lot of people might be scratching their heads going, well, how big of a deal is this tournament when you don't have those two guys involved? And it might be a lot more difficult than just that. I mean, Cena He might not be available because he's working on this other project and he's already committed to that. Lesnar might just say, I don't care how much money you give me. I'm not coming back. It's hunting season right now. So, they just have to go with somebody else. I mean, Lesnar would make a lot of sense because you can easily make him a heel again, I think. Even though a lot of people would love to see him probably pound Roman Reigns some more.
Right.
I mean, the other options, we mentioned Sheamus, but, let's look at the other options that are available that maybe makes more sense. I mean, there's two guys to me that jump right off the page that are already heels, that being Bray Wyatt and the other being Kevin Owens. And with Owens, I think the only thing that could be a little bit difficult is he's also the Intercontinental Champion, and they just did the double champion thing, so maybe they don't want to do that. And if they really want to surprise people, turn Dean Ambrose heel.
Yeah. Anybody you think they're on the phone with anybody that we wouldn't expect to see come back? Maybe a Batista. I mean, Jericho's kind of back, but he's kind of not back. Is there anybody even in the Rolodex that they could even go to at this point that we'd be surprised to see?
Well, I don't even think Jericho's available. I mean, he's committed with his band Fozzy, and they're doing dates throughout November and into December over in the UK. So he's not even available for it. Because I instantly thought of him too, going, hey, just bring back Jericho, Batista, I don't think he can because I think he's doing another movie right now. I think he's committed to a movie or two. So I don't think you can get him. I can just imagine how that conversation would go.
And what about Daniel Bryan? I mean, we've heard all of these stories about that. He feels that he's cleared. He's found doctors that have cleared him. Maroon won't clear him. Maybe Daniel Bryan winds up back in the fold.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's whoever the third doctor is, because he was going to go talk to a third doctor that he and WWE agreed to, and if that person cleared him, then, I think WWE would then clear him, or at least they gave the sign that they would definitely be a lot more willing to clear him if he got another doctor to, say that he was good to go. But I don't know if he's already seen that doctor or what the evaluation was. So, I mean, there's a lot of big questions there. I mean, that's one guy that you could, if you brought him back, though, he can't be a heel. But the interesting dynamic you could do then, and I don't know if WWE would really want to do this, what if Daniel Bryan won the title and Reigns was so pissed that once again, Daniel Bryan, of all people, cost him the championship or got in the way, and you can do the whole storyline of, I've done everything right, and everybody just loves this guy, and he ruined my moment last year at the Royal Rumble. He's ruined my moment of trying to win the championship, and you turn Reigns heel.
Yeah. Lots of possibilities for sure, but right now we're looking at a tournament with a buddy of mine put out on social media a graphic of the tournament brackets, and it was Roman Reigns in every
I saw that.
slot. Oh, okay. I thought that was great.
Yeah, because I'm not exactly sure. There's a lot of different directions where they could go. I mean, where do you think they're going?
I feel like Del Rio will probably play a big part in it. I feel like Del Rio, it may wind up with a Del Rio Roman Reigns final. I feel like, a lot of people have said that they won't turn Dean Ambrose now because Cena's out and they need that babyface, but I feel like right now they need to shake things up. And they need an opponent for Reigns, whether it's Sheamus or somebody else. So I feel like maybe the Dean Ambrose turn comes. I feel like they will probably make a call to Big Dave. I don't know if Big Dave is available, but I think Big Dave will get the call. I mean, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, there are a couple of guys down there they could bring up to freshen up the scene. A lot of possibilities, but at the end of the day, the chickens have come home to roost in that they've booked this even Steven 50-50 style the last couple of years. They've marginalized everybody, and now they're at a point where they need talent depth, and the only depth they have is low to mid card. So maybe it's a rude awakening, and it's nothing that can get fixed overnight, but maybe it's it's something that is noted and something that they will work to avoid in the future.
And it's something that I think right now that gets a lot of people talking and excited about it, because as bad as it is that Rollins got hurt, now a lot of people are wondering, like, ooh, who could get the next chance? And I think that can be very exciting, and it puts WWE in a corner to where they basically have to give an opportunity to somebody else, and we see if they can do something with it. Or at least, for the most part, you think that's going to happen. I mean, next thing you know, Kevin Nash comes out and wins this tournament or something, and you're like, oh my God. Because I mean, Nash did that interview recently at Sports Illustrated and said he felt like he had one more run in him, which, God bless Kevin Nash, but man, he shouldn't be in the world title picture in WWE. So, I just wonder, what kind of different things they could do. Like you said, you mentioned some of the guys in NXT. I've always been of the belief that Samoa Joe was brought in to only be in NXT, unless something really strange and unpredictable happened. And maybe this is it, but when we're talking about winning a tournament or being the champion or being one of the top heels, I just can't see Joe instantly being put in that position.
Yeah, final word on this. It's ironic that they had Alberto Del Rio wrapped up, under wraps, and used him as a quote-unquote surprise against John Cena at the last show, because I don't have a doubt in my mind that if they had Del Rio under wraps and for whatever reason they were saving him for another show, that Del Rio would not only be a surprise at Survivor Series. I would think that Del Rio probably would have left Survivor Series with the title.
Yeah, I know. And now all you could do is you could put him in that tournament and have Jack Swagger go back to his corner and cry a little bit more.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Kurt Angle's a free agent.
Yeah.
Not until the end of the year, though,
right.
actually.
Not to the end of the year. But hey, you know what? If this could have been a totally different dynamic if, say, this happened in January, okay? Because think of who could be a free agent then. I mean, not only Kurt Angle, who I highly doubt they would do, but if you wanted a surprise, I believe Jeff Hardy will be a free agent in January.
Yeah, speaking of surprises, I mentioned Alberto Del Rio. They did their deal with Sting back at Night of Champions. There's a lot of what ifs here, but what if they never used Sting at Night of Champions and kind of kept him under wraps and had Del Rio? So then you could have had a tournament where you had Sting coming into the tournament. You had Del Rio surprise. I mean, there were a lot of things they could have done, and just the chips didn't fall into place. But, of course, I mean, nobody could predict that their champion's going to get hurt.
Right. I mean, if they want to put on a big surprise and really get a pop, I think the biggest thing they could do is check on the health status of Daniel Bryan. And if he got clearance from another doctor, I would say, begrudgingly, we're going to put you back in there. And we're going to put you, we're going to give you the green light, but with promises of, hey, you got to do this and you got to do that for us, or not do this and not do that. And you got to be extra careful, and we know that, sometimes the worst things happen during the easiest moves or the simplest things. We've seen that plenty of times. But if he's gotten clearance from a third doctor, now would be the time. I mean, I know that's a risk when it comes to how Reigns has been treated, because of how the crowd reacts and everything, and they kind of got Reigns on their side now. But I think it's a risk you almost have to take because you need some star power.
Let's be honest with you. Let's be honest for a second. We all know Kane's winning the title at Survivor Series.
Well, it's either Kane or Big Show. We all know that.
Big Show's already the replacement for Rollins over in Europe, so why not?
I mean, well, what, they're getting the battle with the big man. I mean, who cares if you can see Seth Rollins against Kane, which I can't believe that Kane is able to walk, much less wrestle, considering that Bray Wyatt stole his soul.
Yes.
So, that's just, a whole feat right there into its own, and then now he's facing the world's largest athlete. So, who knows? Maybe Braun Strowman will be the champion.
Anything could happen.
Yes, this is the WWE, and as we all know, anything can happen in the WWE.
For whatever reason, and I'm suspect that I'm skeptical, I should say, that it's a little more than coincidence. Reigns appears to be more over to the audiences on Raw than he has been in the last 18 months. All of a sudden, they're putting him in the world title situation, and then miraculously, the crowd loves him. A little skeptical on that. Nonetheless, I think that if they go into a situation again and Reigns does not leave with the world championship, even now, even at Survivor Series, I think they're doomed at that point. I think they got to pull the trigger on this guy at this point. They've teased it, they've set it up, and they finally got him to a spot where people are starting to react. And if they don't take advantage of that moment and the momentum that they're starting to get, I think they're just fools at that point.
Yeah, and I think right now, I think the reason why Reigns is getting a better reception, I think, is for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you remember earlier in the year when he had already earned the shot at Mania, or even before that, remember when he was injured, he was doing those weird Titantron promos that were just beyond awkward and made him look bad?
They were awful.
They were awful. And I mean, I thought that greatly hurt him. And now what we're seeing when him do promos are very short. He acts a little bit more like the tough guy and everything like he should be. And the other thing is too, that I think people have accepted him a little bit more. Like he's kind of, he's been a little bit more battle tested and he's had good matches. And people say, okay, he's not just the pretty guy that they're trying to shove down our throats. He can go out there and he can actually work. I thought when he had that match at Hell in a Cell against Wyatt that I mentioned before,
yeah,
I thought that earned him a lot, when it came to the audience. So they're saying, look at this guy, man. He's putting his body on his line. He's busting his ass. He's having good matches. And they're more accepting of him now.
Well, that has to be it. The coincidence, either they're going out of their way and it's not as organic as it should be, or it was the match with Bray Wyatt at Hell in a Cell. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of, is that he just had one of those matches, which, I don't know. It still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because in that situation, you think he would have gotten that reaction after going toe to toe with Brock. But I mean, it really is the only explanation at that point. Okay, let's take a look here and say Reigns does get the title, whether it's November or December. How do you think he fares as champion? Do you think that do you think there'll be initial backlash, or do you think we're past that point?
I think we're past that point. I mean, I'm not saying that the ratings are going to jump up or anything like that, because they're just not. But I think we're past that point. As long as you keep him in, good in feuds that, he's not doing long promos again, and he's actually having good matches. So that means you can't put him in these feuds with the Big Show or Kane and saying, well, it's going to make him look better because he's beating this big guys. I think we're past that point, especially with those two guys in particular, where people say, wow, you look so impressive because you beat them. It's not impressive to beat them anymore. It's more impressive to be able to sit there and say, I've had good matches with this guy. I've had good matches with that guy. And, and that's what's going to impress people a lot more.
All right, so you and I both talked about the Raw ratings a little bit. We both hinted at it. So Raw's coming off an 18-year low cumulative rating. You and I talked about this extensively on one of your podcasts just a couple of weeks ago. My opinion was they just need to be more edgy, and you and I thought that they would react to those low ratings at that time. They really haven't. And at this point, what do you do? I mean, Is there a solution at this point? Is it just withering the storm? You could say, well, all they got to do is get through the NFL season. But at that rate, they've lost so many fans. It's hard to get them back, because then you got the NBA playoffs coming up, and then all of a sudden, you have the summer, which is generally not a good rating season anyway for Raw. It seems like they're almost spiraling down the point of no return. What's your take on it?
Well, the funny thing is that the ratings are so low, but their business is, as strong as it's ever been behind the scenes. I mean, you hear about the monetary figures coming out of this. They've got that great TV deal. The numbers are up for the WWE network. I mean, they're always going to be at their greatest point for the network around WrestleMania season.
Yeah.
But it's not like they took a huge slide backwards. WWE is at a point now when it comes to WrestleMania and with SummerSlam, that I think those brand names alone are selling and getting people to get on the network, and they feel like these big event shows, like a Mayweather Pacquiao fight almost, or even when it comes to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they're not doing those kinds of numbers, but they have that big event feel. So WWE, I don't think, has to freak out about that. When it comes to the ratings, I mean, obviously they would like to have them up higher, but I don't think anybody's panicking about it like they used to, just because they're the only, brand that's out there from a
Yeah.
standpoint of, when people think of wrestling, they think of WWE. It's as low as they are, it's not as bad probably as we make it out to be from the standpoint that ratings across the board are down so much because of the DVR factor and because there are so many different things that people can watch, or people even cutting the cord and things like that. So it's not the same business that it once was. And I think the other thing is too, when you look at this, we're past that kind of time where we used to have all these gotcha moments in wrestling, especially when we had, the Monday Night Wars. And, even over the last few years, there are times where you have memorable moments, but they're just not as common anymore. And I don't know if that means WWE needs to hot shot an angle or if that's something they need to look at. And obviously you can't do it all the time, but it used to feel like there was something that would happen like every 4 to 6 weeks that kind of stood out. We don't get those anymore. I mean, I can't remember the last time that we really got one of those.
Yeah, and I just think, and again, stuff we've talked about before, but I think that it's very hard. Pardon me. It's very hard to resonate with these characters. The promos, and I hate to be one of these guys that harps on scripted promos because everybody does, but I mean, there's a reason for it. They're just not the same. I mean, I was watching some old tapes recently, and I'm watching Monday Night Raw and looking at Roman Reigns promo. It's terrible. It's not the content, it's the delivery, and it's just not genuine. I mean, all these guys have the same tone and inflection. Except for Paul Heyman, and of course his ability supersedes most of the roster. I just think that I think fans are so used to seeing the Raw product that they've seen for so long, and they know they can tune out week to week, and it's not going to matter. And I think John Cena matters. I really do. I know a lot of people hate him, but anytime that guy's on there, especially in the that final segment, it does better numbers than not. And you're seeing now no John Cena, and you're seeing them pay the price for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Cena, say what you will, I mean, that guy's going to get a bump in business, but there has to come that time where they sit there and say, John's not going to be here all the time. Well, we can't use John in the same way. And they've already started to change his role. Where obviously he's still a big part of the show, but he's not in the world title picture. And that's something that, I think they want to continue doing something like that from a standpoint over the next couple of years. They almost want to put him in the special attraction role. Now, Is John going to buy into that right now? Probably not. But sooner or later, that time's going to come. And WWE might have to say, we have to take the hit now, if that means building up guys for the long term and making sure they can step into that role and people accept them, as John, takes a smaller role with the company because, hey, we can sit here and talk about all the downfalls that we saw with WCW. That was one of the major problems is the reliance on older stars and how they would not look to the future and create new guys. And WWE has to do that. I mean, especially now more than ever because they've spent all this money investing in their future. They've got a performance center. They've got it stocked full of talent. They're going out there and they're grabbing other guys from around the world to put there, and they're pushing NXT. So they've got the talent. And it's just to have to invest in that future and sometimes take a hit with these guys when they bring them up to the main roster.
Yes, agree with everything you're saying. Speaking of these guys, The Undertaker. We're now going to see The Undertaker on 2 pay-per-views, his second straight pay-per-view in a row, which I can't even remember the last time The Undertaker wrestled 2 pay-per-views in a row. Do you think we're getting to the point where we're seeing a little too much Undertaker? Because, especially coming off the Brock Lesnar match. The Brock Lesnar series, especially the last 2 matches, were phenomenal. I thought they were great. I thought the Hell in a Cell match was fantastic. And to take him off of that and put him in a tag match against the Wyatts, I think at that point it's kind of the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing is because, and they could still do this obviously, but we kind of thought, if they do something with Taker at Mania, maybe they would do the tag match there, right?
Yeah.
Or, we also heard the rumor, and please let it only be a rumor, that could be Undertaker against Braun Strowman at WrestleMania, which is just an egads moment. But it is weird to kind of see him this much now. And the funny thing is that, okay, so I don't know if it's going to be a traditional Survivor Series elimination match, involving all those guys coming up here in a few weeks, or if it's going to be just a tag team match. But I still get the sense that, especially if it's a tag team match, that Taker and Kane would be the ones winning. And maybe I'm wrong, but if that is in fact the case, then it's another one of these feuds with Bray Wyatt where I think the crowd responds to Bray. I don't think WWE knows exactly what they have in him and exactly how to use him. And it is difficult because he has such a unique character and his promos and everything like that. But Bray Wyatt needs a big win because how many times have we seen him in these feuds? And they can make the feud look good, but come the end of the day, he's the one with his shoulders on the mat. And sooner or later, he needs a win.
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping around a little bit, just in the interest of time, there's an interview I came across this week with Batista. And I mean, we all know how well Batista's last run in the WWE did not go. And he had an interesting quote in there. He's doing promotion for this James Bond movie. He was asked about coming back, and he said he'd love to come back, but the only way he'd want to come back is to work house shows. He said he doesn't want to get involved with the creative BS. He doesn't want to get involved with TV or anything like that. It doesn't even have to be for a lot of money, he said. This is what he said. He said he just wants to come back, wrestle, work house shows, and have that pressure-free environment of just being on the road at the house shows. I don't think I can ever. I mean, it's so polar opposite of guys in his position who come back that don't want to run workhouse shows like Alberto Del Rio and only want the big storylines. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, to me, that sounds like he's been talking to his good buddy Chris Jericho, who has the same exact deal. And I think he's probably talked to Chris, and Chris is like, man, this is the best thing. He goes, no politics, no storylines, no dealing with creative. I just go out there. I get to do my matches. Maybe I cut a promo before the match or whatever. I kind of get to have some choice in who I work with. We go out there. We do our thing. We have a match. The crowd enjoys it. And I go in the back. I get in my car, and I don't have to worry about anything else. Yeah. And I think Batista's the same way. Quite honestly, I think Randy Orton would love to have that deal. Especially at this point in his career, and hell, we're not even going to see Randy until at least WrestleMania. But I mean, Randy's been around for a long time. And I'm not saying that, he's going to get a deal like this or is saying he wants to, but I think he would love it because I think Randy is one of these guys that doesn't like all the other, stuff that goes into the wrestling business. And that's dealing with the politics of it and the creative and, oh, I got to go do this. And I really don't want to do that, but I got to do it. I got to try to make it look good when all I want to do is I want to go out there and I want to wrestle. Oh, and by the way, I want to be a heel. Don't even make me a baby face.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, and Batista was dead right. I mean, how many times have we heard him complain about, I told them, do not bring me back as a baby face. And they did it and it sucked. And he was dead on right. I mean, it's funny because like, we didn't hear too much from Batista, when it came to the public eye and interviews until like maybe the last, year, 2 years.
Yeah.
Batista comes off to me as like a very smart, nice guy.
Absolutely.
He understands the business. He's very charismatic. He's very personal. And it's just like, where has this Batista been my entire life?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A guy that probably would not want to come back to work strictly house shows would be Stone Cold Steve Austin. And you had the opportunity of reeling in that white whale and talking to him for a Fox Sports story. And even still, that the match is off the table with Brock Lesnar, he still has not closed that door completely. What did he give you, 0.1%?
Yeah, he said it's 99.9% that he's had his last match already.
Yeah, he's still not closing the door.
He will not. Well, here's kind of my thought behind it, because I kind of hammered him on this. And I mean, I was persistent about it. I think he does that just so in his own peace of mind, he can always say, one day if I got that itch, if I really wanted to do it, I could do it. And I'm not being a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he doesn't want to get people's hopes up that he's going to do it. He doesn't want to, promote a match or anything like that. I think this is just the wrestler in him kind of having that peace of mind, like, well, you know what? I'm not retired. I'm not retired, but he really is retired.
It's funny because I'd love to see him come back. I think.
Don't you agree? I mean, I asked him this question because we could sit here, and I'm not trying to make fun of the roster that WWE has right now.
Yeah.
And when Paul started stirring the pot, but even before then, when you sit there and you talk about Dallas, Texas, WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar's got to be in the main event probably. What match would you want to see? What's a bigger match than Austin versus Lesnar? And then with
Texas
Heyman,
death match.
yeah, especially after Heyman talked it up, and Heyman even sold it in a way like they can have all the bells and whistles. They can fight around the building. They can use weapons. They don't have to do a 15 suplex match where Austin May would take only, maybe 2 or 3. But they can bring in the weapons. They can do those shortcuts and everything and just do everything and rip each other apart around the building where, Austin's not taking a ton of bumps. I mean, he explained it in that interview and they're not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's be honest, what we've gotten out of Stone Cold Steve Austin the last 2 times that he's been on TV has not been a whole hell of a lot.
No, and he even said that, when I asked him about this last Raw appearance, because you know what the funny thing is like, I mean, for how many weeks did we hear stuff about Austin was being advertised as he was going to be on Raw? So I asked him about it, and he was just like, yeah, I'm catching grief, and I'm not going to be on it. And then the morning of, he said he was, wherever he was, and he got a text, and they're like, hey, man, we want you to be on Raw tonight. So he was just like, okay, I'll do it as a favor.
Yeah.
But the stuff that he was given, he's just like, hell, I haven't been on the show in 4 years. Give me a 10-minute segment where Stone Cold can raise some hell and shoot a promo from the hip. And instead they're like, all right, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to mention that WrestleMania is coming up in Dallas, that you are going to be interviewing Brock Lesnar coming up later on, and Lesnar's facing Undertaker, and you're going to introduce Taker.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, okay. So, I mean, he was not thrilled with that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Another guy another Hall of Famer who is back in the fold, superstar Billy Graham, my old friend, a guy I interviewed a couple of times, and maybe the only true loose cannon that is left in the business. And here's a guy that has publicly ripped this company to shreds in recent years, including their talent. I mean, I follow his Facebook just more for comedy because after big shows, especially WrestleMania, I mean, he just takes it and rips it and rips it and rips it. And yet here we are. A miracle happened, Brian, in that he was offered a contract and now he's back in the fold. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it?
It is, man, because you want to talk about the guy that's probably been the most boisterous against that company, in particular, people there.
And vicious.
Oh, I mean, hey, look at the stuff that he said about Pat Patterson, accused him of raping boys and with the company. And there's people in the company that love Pat and are ticked off about that and have been ticked off about it. But and the funny thing is, so Billy even went back on that stuff. They put him in the Hall of Fame, and then he got all ticked off again for whatever reason. I'm sure some of it was money and whatever kind of deal and everything. So he rips the company, he sells his Hall of Fame ring, and he's, going off of the mouth about everybody there. And then now all of a sudden he has this conversation with Triple H and he's back in the fold. And I mean, Triple H is like a miracle worker in the people he's been able to bring back in the company. It's amazing. And he and Vince McMahon obviously have a soft spot for superstar Billy Graham because of the stuff that he said, but yet they're still willing to overlook that and give him a Legends deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's truly amazing. I mean, the stuff I mean, you've already given some of his greatest hits, but I can't think of a guy that's been more outspoken and yet he gets his deal. I mean, he went out and campaigned against Linda McMahon. I mean, if that's not going to get you banned for life, I don't know what will. Yeah,
that's the other thing, too. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, Vince, we're picking on one of your best friends and Pat Patterson. Oh, no. It was his wife, too.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy stuff.
How about the part where he says he wants to go to the Performance Center and take over the promo class since Dusty passed away?
Oh yeah, and at the same time he's on Facebook advising that Seth Rollins should start doing steroids in a responsible way, like Vince McMahon does.
Right, in a responsible way.
That was awesome, like Vince McMahon does. That was awesome. Another guy that is back, Alberto Del Rio. I've probably read about 6 or 7 different versions of Alberto coming back from Dave Meltzer, but it appears that he got some good money to come back. He's back in the fold, and his first big feud is going to be with Jack Swagger, and it just goes to show, you were talking about before how the company needs to know this and that about one of our other stories, and yet here they put all these resources into Alberto, and we're winding back the clock to WrestleMania. I think it was 27 or 28, and Jack Swagger again.
Isn't it weird when it comes to the way that Del Rio is coming back? Because, well, okay, so obviously he had that incident with a WWE employee, but I mean, remember that Del Rio has said there are people in management of the company that have made racist remarks, especially when it comes to African Americans and Latinos, but yet he's going back to that company.
Here's one thing that's not going to be able to get away from them. I know that they have all these plans to make him this big Latino star, but when they go back to Mexico or they try and branch out in the Latin markets, there are plenty of interviews, just as you said, out there that Alberto did in about that 30-day window before he signed that agreement with the WWE, which prevented him from doing interviews, where he said exactly what you said and went into detail about the incident. I mean, I don't know. To me, I think you're bringing on more trouble than it's worth, because anytime they put this guy in the Latino market, a Latino reporter, at least one with any credibility, is going to ask him about these comments, and he's going to have to talk about it. Whereas if they were building up somebody else, maybe they wouldn't ask them. I don't know. It just seems like they're opening up a can of worms with that guy.
Well, the thing is, too, I think, is he could try to sit there and say, well, I've had conversations with management and I've been reassured that that has been taken care of and it won't happen again or anything like that. But then I would think that people are going to push for who exactly made these comments. And that's something that they don't want to name names, and they shouldn't, because that's really where you open a can of worms. And the other thing is, too, they bring Del Rio back in the fold. And, I think he's a really talented guy, but I don't care under what scenario you do it. He's not a babyface to me.
No.
He's just not.
No. And if you're going to commit to Del Rio, you might as well commit to Ricardo, and you might as well commit to having them come out in the cars, because that's the best. That was the best way that he got over when he was there.
But isn't there a way where you can bring back Ricardo? You can bring back the cars and keep him a heel, because Paul Heyman. No, I understand Paul Heyman is an extremely special talent.
Yes.
Paul Heyman does the same thing to begin his promos each and every time, and the people voice in, but yet when he needs to be a heel, he's a heel. And I'm wondering, can you do something with Del Rio, I guess, in the way that he wrestles and the way that he wins, to where you can have the whole excitement of the car and people reciting with Ricardo and whatnot, but make him a heel. I mean, hell, have Ricardo, help cheat for him all the time, to where people, despise this guy. I mean, to me, Del Rio is a heel. When they turned a babyface the last time, it was one of the most backwards way to do it, and it flopped. Yep. And you know what? They can even do a better job with it, and I still do not think it will work, because people are not going to perceive him as a babyface.
Yep, absolutely. A couple more things before we wrap up. Kurt Angle will be a free agent around WrestleMania time. Do you think we see him back in the WWE ring in 2016?
No. I'd like him to. I really would. And I think that Kurt will beg, borrow, and steal to get that match or to be on that show. But I just don't see it happening. I don't even know who he'd face, but I really don't care who he'd face, quite honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to see Kurt back. But I mean, you look at the state of his body right now, and it's funny because we sit here and we talk about the stuff that Billy Graham said. I mean, the stuff that Kurt Angle said at the time, I know he's apologized since then, but man, that was a pretty harsh way that he went out. And I think he had a pretty good relationship with Vince before that. So I don't know if that still felt hard. I don't know if time will heal all wounds there. To me, it's not just a Vince thing. It has to be Triple H that really wants him back, that sees that need. And I don't think I think they'd be happy to bring him back into the fold under a Legends contract. I don't think they want him to work there.
Brian, we've just talked about two guys that have said things more harsh than he, in Alberto Del Rio and Superstar Graham, and they're back.
I know, but I think I don't think they want to bring back Kurt right now, because he would still want to wrestle, and I don't think they want him to wrestle. And you know what? I almost wonder, has it been too close to his run with TNA? Like, would they want to wait like a year, or something like that?
Yeah.
Because I would think that if I could get Kurt Angle under the fold, like as a Legends deal, as an ambassador, I would do it, and I know he's had some personal problems as well. But as long as those have been, you know, in his rearview mirror a little bit farther, and I know he's not an active wrestler, that I feel like maybe those problems won't continue, or you at least hope not. You get him under the fold. He could be a trainer, at least on a part-time basis, or whenever he wants down at the performance center. He could be your ambassador going around because he's so well spoken. I think very well liked. I would want Kurt Angle involved in my company.
Another guy, Sting. What do you think his future holds? And I ask you this because we're coming off of Monday Night Raw, where they chronicled last year's Survivor Series, and he wasn't even shown in the in the video, and yet they're currently marketing one of his DVDs. I don't think he's going anywhere because his character plays well for video games and that kind of thing. So I think that he'll be around for a while, at least under a contract to market him in video games and things like that. But do you think we see him back in the ring at WrestleMania?
Probably not. I think the only way we ever see Sting back in the ring is if it's in some kind of a tag team match.
Yeah.
Like maybe they do something like Sting and Kane and Taker against the Wyatts. Something along those lines, maybe. But other than that, I don't see him back in the ring. I think with, at his age and with him getting injured the way that he did, this is another one of these situations kind of like with Kurt Angle. We don't want somebody to get seriously injured under a watch. And he's already at a certain age, and Sting got hurt there. I mean, it looks like it was just a stinger, but it was pretty scary, at the moment. And even afterwards they just don't want something bad to happen to the guy, especially under their watch. So I doubt that we see him back at the ring, or if it is, it's in a very limited capacity where they can hide him in a tag match.
Yep. And finally, Hulk Hogan. Do you think we ever see him back? I was just listening to a podcast that somebody did with Paul Heyman, and he said never say never, because he said you just never know what the landscape's going to look like and how forgiving people could be or could not be. He said he doesn't see it happening, but you just never know. Do you think he's ever back?
Absolutely, he's back. I think we have to get past this lawsuit against Gawker first, which who knows how that's going to turn out. I mean, what was the last thing? Like his lawyers got rights to go look through a bunch
forensics
of Gawker's, like through Gawker's computers for forensics to see if they're the ones that leaked out the information about him. So, and if that happens, guess what? Ding, ding, ding! $100 million coming to the Hulk.
So what does he even need to bother with getting involved in wrestling if he's got
he loves wrestling, man. He loves wrestling. I think once that lawsuit is done, give it about a year or two. So I'm saying that within 5 years to be back with the company, and it could be like 2 or 3 years. I think he'll be back. I think at that point he'll be like, I've made my mistakes. I've been honest about it. I apologize. I love this business. I love this company. I love my fans. Please take me back.
And finally, we're talking about all these guys possibly wrestling at WrestleMania or not wrestling at WrestleMania. Do you think TNA Impact Wrestling is on television the week of WrestleMania?
In India, it definitely will be.
How about in the United States? On a network, not streaming over your computer.
That's a very interesting question. I think they will definitely, if they're not on TV in the United States, I think they're going to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
I've heard some stuff that maybe they're filming a bunch of stuff so they can do, I don't know if it's a full-fledged TV show, but at least do angles and do matches. They'll be for YouTube. And I think you've seen some more, short video content that they've done for their website and pop up on YouTube and stuff. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming. I don't know about getting a TV deal here in the States, though, but I mean, that deal that they got with India, with Sony 6, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
That deal, I mean, I saw one article where they were talking about it. That's a 6-year deal worth almost $54 million, I think it was. Okay. So they're getting like $9 million a year from the India deal.
Yeah.
They've got their deal with Fight Network, but I don't know how long that one lasts. And I've heard that's not, for much money. The UK deal they have, but I don't know if that one's for a lot of money either. The India deal is the best deal that they have going right now. And they're going to try to get on TV. I mean, hell, There's still some rumblings that Spike would like to still be involved in wrestling. There's some people in Spike that would like it. There's some people that don't. It's just, convincing them, yes, we want wrestling, and the wrestling we want is TNA. I mean, everything that I've heard is the people from Spike, they got along with TNA. They had a really good business relationship. They just felt it was time to split. Other than that, I'm not sure where they could pop up. I mean, I've heard a rumor of WGN still out there, but I mean, hell, we've heard that rumor for 5 years when it comes to them. So I don't know if there's anything to it or not. I mean, WGN definitely has changed their programming for what they've done, because remember, they were very heavy in old syndication shows. They were very, heavy in, Cubs baseball and even White Sox baseball. And they're not doing that anymore. They're producing their own shows. I mean, Manhattan is a show that they've made that's actually gotten really good reviews and has done well for them. And they did another one that was on, was it like witches or vampires or something? I can't remember. But they did another one of those that actually got good reviews. So, they're trying to create their own programming now, like original content. Maybe they want to go the wrestling route, but we all know when it comes to that, like, how much is that going to cost you? And are you going to be able to bring in any advertising? Because if you do, then guess what? You've done something that nobody else can do unless you're associated with WWE. And even then, it's on a limited basis.
It would not surprise me at all to see them land a Netflix deal, because Netflix seems to be very aggressive in pursuing original content. And I could see that. I could certainly see that happening. Not that I've heard any rumors that way, but I could certainly see that happening.
That's what I've wondered about Global Force.
Yeah.
Because I think Global Force would be open to a Netflix deal or a Hulu deal. The Hulu deal, to me, would probably be the more attractive one, just because with Netflix, you would think that's a little bit more seasonal and not year round. Hulu is something that I could see an episode per week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's true. Well, Brian, this has been a very fast podcast. Went really fast. And as always, we go into overtime. Take as much time as you need and plug away. Where can people read your musings, where they can hear you? Talk about it.
All that fun stuff. So you can find it on betweentheropes.com. You can find me there, and you can find me on Twitter. It's just at Brian Fritz. And you can find all the different Between the Ropes podcasts, not only on iTunes or on Stitcher, but you can find it on SoundCloud as well. And then also you could do a Google search for me. You'll find me writing also for Sporting News and also for Fox Sports, where I'm doing, a couple pieces a month. I've already done interviews with Chris Jericho and Steve Austin there. So you can find it all by using the power of Google.
Yeah, and again, this interview going up the next day or so, and Brian has a very recent interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and we just scratched the surface, if that, on your interview. So I would highly recommend anybody listening to go check it out, because it's very comprehensive, and it's very revealing too, very revealing.
I held him to the gun, man. I was kept asking him about coming back for a match and everything, to the point where I literally had to say, hey, I got to keep on you about this so we can get past this, because otherwise people are going to keep talking about it. So I think he understood. It's just he gets uncomfortable talking about himself to a certain point, because he's a big wrestling fan and he just wants to have a conversation and talk about wrestling rather than, somebody, just picking away at him when it comes to that potential match. But he was cool about it.
Awesome. Well, best of luck. We'll do this again very soon, whether it's here or over in your house. But always